Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 4 o'clock on Wednesday, April 10th. It is time for the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting of the City of Tallahassee. Welcome to your chambers. We're so glad that each and every one of you could join us. At this time, will you please stand and join me in welcoming Pastor Zig Bays, the senior pastor at Chairs United Methodist Church, for a non-denominational invocation. Pastor Bays.
Let us pray. God of all nations and people, you have called us to live lives of righteousness and justice, to live together in peace and wholeness. Bless those who have gathered here to do the work appointed to them as they represent this great city of Tallahassee. Enable them as leaders to ask the right questions, discern the right decisions, and lead our city with humility and fairness. Provide wisdom and clarity as they listen to others and as they communicate with one another. Remind them and us that we're not only leaders but also servants. That is all of our responsibilities, to serve the common good of all. To those who lead here, grant the patience of cooperations. To those who discuss here, grant clarity of thought. To those who decide, grant the courage of truth. Give to all the gifts of discernment, wisdom, and vision. Grant them and us the wisdom and courage to know and have confidence in the decisions made for the betterment of Tallahassee. May these leaders and others speak out when it's time to speak out, to listen patiently and respectfully when it's time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and by the spirit of love. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, and all that is good and right and true. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Girl Scout Troop 101 joining us tonight. And if you'll please stand and where you are, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Pastor Bays, thank you very much. Girl Scouts of Troop 101, thank you very much, and it's glad to have you here with us. Mr. Sean Smith, who is a sixth grader at Cobb Middle School, has also been shadowing me all day. Sean, will you please stand? He's interested in government. Love to have you here. Before we get into the presentations, Mr. City Manager, do we have any agenda modifications?
Mr. Mayor, we've got one update. Item 13.04, the attachment has been updated since the original release of the agenda.
Excellent. 13.04 has been updated. Any questions, colleagues? No? Wonderful. Okay, we have two presentations. We have two proclamations for today, and I would like to ask Agnes Fury and members of the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice to please come join me for proclamation. Is Agnes here? Agnes is not here yet. Nonetheless, I will go ahead and present the proclamation, and when Agnes does get here, we will make sure that she has it. From the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas Americans are the victims of 20 million crimes each year affecting individuals and communities. And whereas years of investment in crime victims' rights and services have developed a system of victim response that can help victims recover from crime. And whereas reaching and serving all victims of crime is essential to supporting thriving communities because those who receive holistic services and support are more likely to remain invested in their communities. And whereas dedicated victim service providers are working every day to meet the needs of crime victims, yet there are still too many victims without access to rights and services. And whereas many victims face barriers such as isolation, distrust of authorities, language limitations, lack of transportation, or cultural barriers that keep them from accessing the services and criminal justice systems that can help them recover from crime. And whereas we must make a dedicated effort to expand the circle of those prepared to respond to victims and link them with the resources that can help them recover. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit, ensuring that all victims of crime are afforded their rights and receive a trauma-informed response. And whereas the City of Tallahassee is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors, now therefore, I, John Daly, as Mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize that the week of April 7th through the 13th of 2019 is proclaimed as Crime Victims' Rights Week, and hereby reaffirm this city's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find related assistance, support, justice, and peace. Signed by me, John Daly, Mayor of Tallahassee, dated April 10th, 2019. How about a round of applause for our victim assistance? And now for the Earth Day proclamation, I would like to recognize and call upon the department directors, if you are here from the electric department, Star Metro, Parks and Recreation, Community Beautification. If you're here, please come forward. Kim Ross, come on forward. Kim is with Rethink Energy. And where's Jim Davis? Jim, come on forward. Jim Davis of Sustainable Tallahassee. All these individuals represent an entire workforce that works hard each day to ensure the city continues to be a leader in the field of sustainability, putting into action the organization's commitment to environmentally friendly practices. I am proud to say that both Jim and Kim, along with our outstanding team, have been absolutely fantastic to work with, moving our community forward to reach our goals. I'm going to ask Kim and Jim actually to come stand next to me so that I can present you with this proclamation. Oh, Peggy, I'm sorry. I didn't even see you right behind me. How are you doing? Excellent. You got it. You got it. Absolutely. From the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas April 22nd, 2019 marks the 49th annual celebration of Earth Day, which began on April 22nd, 1970, with the goal of inspiring environmental awareness and encouraging the conservation, protection, and appreciation of our nation's natural resources. And whereas the City of Tallahassee has a long-standing, demonstrated record of proactive environmental stewardship and is recognized for its leadership in sustainability initiatives, and whereas Tallahassee was the first city in Florida to be certified as a green city at the gold level by the Florida Green Building Coalition and was recertified at the gold level in 2013, and whereas the City of Tallahassee, named #1 public utility in America, has been voted as having the best tasting drinking water in the state, has received numerous awards for its clean and efficient natural gas operations, and is a nationally recognized leader in the solar energy production arena. And whereas the city has performed more than 58,000 free energy audits for customers, provides a variety of grants, rebates, and low-interest loans to aid customers with home repairs and appliance purchases that will make their house more energy efficient, and promote energy efficiency throughout innovative programs such as Neighborhood Reach and the Demand-Side Conservation Management Program. And whereas the city has developed and implemented numerous programs that promote recycling, green buildings, energy conservation and efficiency, waste reduction, local food production, water quality improvement and conservation, and active lifestyles to help our community be more sustainable. And whereas sustainability initiatives such as the Community Gardening Program, Think About Personal Pollution, TAP program, and more have provided citizens with opportunities to become engaged in activities that save money and protect the environment. And whereas Tallahassee has a nationally recognized park system, which includes 75 miles of hiking and biking trails and roughly 4,000 acres of parkland to protect natural habitats and resources. And whereas Tallahassee has one of the highest percentages of tree coverage in the nation at 55%, and has for 26 consecutive years been recognized by the Arbor Day Foundation as a Tree City USA. And whereas the Tallahassee City Commission adopted a clean energy resolution in February 2019 that outlines the goals and sets milestone markers for moving the organization and the community to 100% renewable energy by 2050. And whereas the City of Tallahassee is already progressing toward the goals contained within the Clean Energy Resolution by planning for a second 40-megawatt solar farm on the property of the Tallahassee International Airport, procuring 15 new all-electric buses as part of a partnership with Florida State University, and incorporating compressed natural gas-powered vehicles within the city fleet. And whereas the city's electric utility has already reduced emissions beyond the set goals for both the 2020 Paris Accord and the Kyoto Protocol, and is on track to surpass the 2025 Paris Accord goal well before that time. And whereas the City of Tallahassee proudly recognizes all who follow positive environmental practices and will promote activities and behaviors that inspire environmental awareness and encourage the conservation, protection, and appreciation of our nation's natural resources throughout the month of April and always. Now, therefore, I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2019 as Tallahassee's Earth Day, signed by me, the mayor of Tallahassee, I dated it April 22nd, 2019. I'd like to present this proclamation to all of you. You mind if we get one big picture real quick? No rabbit ears, Matlow. How about just come on down?
Say yes.
Hey, I can do it.
Excellent, thank you.
Mayor, Miss Agnes is here.
Ms. Agnes.
Right here.
Where? Oh. Mr. City Manager, do we have any announcements?
No, sir.
All right, we are at that point in the commission meeting where we are asking for input from the citizenry on agenda items. If you would like to speak on any of the agenda items, please fill out a speaker card in the back. We ask that you state your name and your address for the record, and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes so we can be respectful of everyone's time. With that said, Mr. Cook, do we have any speakers?
Mayor, I have two speakers at this time. The first will be Dr. Hollifield, followed by Barney Bishop. If other speakers, I think I see some forms coming my way, and I'll call them in a moment. If each speaker will use 3 minutes for his or her remarks and start with your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it. Dr. Holifield's on item 9.01, which is your consent item dealing with FDOT agreement and reconstruction of an airport runway.
Dr. Hollifield, please join us. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming out.
Dr. Hollifield, the issue is the airport. And I have my feelings about that. I think it's a valuable resource to the citizens of Tallahassee. And it shouldn't end up in the chamber, the hands of the chamber, and the friends of the chamber. Matter of fact, going all the way back to apartheid in South Africa, when we were fighting General Dynamics and Tateran, I think a good rule of thumb regarding the chamber and their invitation-only policy, like up in Greenville, is to do the exact opposite. If you do the exact opposite of what the chamber recommends and these leadership Tallahassee people, then you will be serving the public interest to a much higher degree. And when I say displace priorities, in 2004, by comparison, all this airport stuff, 2004, I wrote a letter to the Tallahassee Democrat. What is that, a decade and a half ago? In which I said black infant mortality in Leon County was 53% higher than the state average. What is that, a decade and a half ago? Black infant mortality, 53% higher than the state average. And to my surprise, the Democrat even published it. But did anybody really listen? Not really. The money goes to Doubletree and Ron Sachs and whatever Ron Sachs wants and Mad Dog Construction. Things have not gotten better. 2015, I'll give you 3 years, 2015. White infant mortality in Leon County was 5.1 per 1,000 live births. That's the unit. 2017, white infant mortality in Leon County had decreased to 2.5 per 1,000 live births. But what happened to black infant mortality in Leon County? We aren't talking about Haiti. We aren't talking about Cuba. By the way, Cuba has better numbers than we do relative to infant mortality. But in 2015, black infant mortality in Leon County, I'm not talking about no third world, shithole countries as Trump would describe them. Black infant mortality in Leon County in 2015 was 8.5 per 1,000 live births. Again, compared to 5.1 for whites. By 2017, right around the corner, black infant mortality went up from 8.5 to 9.5 per 1,000 live births. Now, suppose the reverse were present. What is that, 3.8 times the white for blacks? Suppose it were reversed, and white babies were dying at 3.8 times the rate for black babies.
You're at about 2.5.
Then we would have a public health emergency. You wouldn't stand for it. You simply would not stand for it. And we give all this money to people who really don't care about the black community, like Big Bing Cares, who'd rather have me in jail. But we got a serious problem here. Y'all didn't listen to me back in 2004 when I wrote that letter to the Democrat. Again, 53% higher than the state average.
Dr. Hollifield, if you could wrap up your thoughts, that'd be great.
30 seconds. Right now,
Please work with me.
we got 2017, 9.5. 9.5. That's higher than a whole bunch of other countries that are in the third world.
Thank you, Dr. Hollifield. I appreciate it.
I'm saying y'all just need to get serious in terms of what your priorities should be. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Certainly do appreciate it. Our next speaker?
Next speaker is Barney Bishop on item 1305, which is your procurement item for managed services.
Mr. Bishop, your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Barney Bishop, 2215 Thomasville Road. Actually, I'm not going to speak to that issue. I just wanted to come up here and use my first opportunity to speak to compliment commissioners on your staff. I had the opportunity to deliver a public records request last Friday, and I immediately got an email from Susan Myers wanting some clarification, and I want to tell you that I got the information on Tuesday. I got everything that I asked for. In addition to that, I had asked to meet with your procurement manager, Mr. LeBroth. I don't know if he was volunteered to meet with me or if he was ordered to, but either way, let me tell you something. He is a real professional. He's very competent. He was very forthcoming, and he was very educational for me. And as a result of that, I no longer have any questions about the procurement process. I will have some comments when we get to 13.05 later on. But, I'm here most of the time because I'm not happy with something that's been done or about to be done. And I think it's just as important, in fact, more important, that when y'all do something right, when your staff does something right, I think that you need to know that. And you should be very proud of both Mr. Cook in the Public Records Office and Mr. LeBroth. And I also met Mr. Melton, who spent almost an hour with me, probably 58, 59 minutes, talking about procurement and answered every question and volunteered a bunch of information. So it really gives me a lot of confidence, and I just wanted to tell you how good a staff that you've got. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Bishop, you have another 5 or 6 minutes if you'd like to continue. I don't. Mayor, we do have additional speakers who would like to speak at the time the item comes up. Those are the only two I have for this portion of the meeting. We also have unagended speakers, which we'll take at the end.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anybody here that has not had an opportunity to fill out a comment card but would like to speak on an issue? Seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. City Manager, do we have any appearances by other appointed boards or committees?
No, Mr. Mayor.
We're on the consent agenda item. Have any of the consent agenda items been pulled from consent?
No, sir.
Consent agenda item has been moved by Commissioner Bryant, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox and the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously. We're on item 11.01. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I believe this item is
Mr. Cook, excuse
one that
me.
I will take. It's a sinking fund commission reappointment, and as all of you may know, but probably haven't worked with yet, the sinking fund commission is comprised of you as the 5 elected officials and 3 citizen members who look at matters dealing with our pension plan investments and that sort of thing. And so what we have here is Nan Hillis is a current member of that 3-member group. She has served us well, and she's recommended for reappointment. This would be her second and final term.
Move approval.
Is there any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, it's been properly moved by Commissioner Bryant, seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously. 11.02, Mr. Treasurer Clerk.
We're going
Here, I think
to
we'll
shuffle
pass it
the.
back.
Y'all gonna shuffle?
We're going to shuffle on you,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager.
I'll handle this one. 1102 is seeking the reappointment of seat number 4 to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board. Staff recommends that you reappoint Matthew Latch to a term to expire June 2022.
Excellent. Any public comment? Mr.
No, sir.
Clerk.
Move acceptance.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those, any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. 11.03, Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This one involves the reappointments of 3 individuals to our Tallahassee Housing Authority. We're recommending the reappointment of Mr. Walter Kelly with a term expiration of April 2023. The reappointment of James L. Moran, Jr. with the term expiring April 2023. And finally, the reappointment of Reverend Julius McAllister, Jr., also with the term expiring April 2023.
Do we have any public comment, Mr. Treasurer Clerk?
We do not.
Excellent.
Move staff recommendation.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0 unanimously. 11.04, Mr. Treasurer Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. This item concerns the Citizen Review Committee for the applications for your position of City Auditor. As you well know and the public knows, the City Auditor retired or resigned from the city service to take a position at Florida A&M University effective at the end of March, beginning of April. In anticipation of that, earlier in March, you had approved a process for appointment of a new city auditor. A key part of that process was for each of you to identify a citizen to serve on a review committee. Those 5 appointed, plus a 6th member who will serve as the chair of the group, and that chair will be the person who serves as chair of the city's audit committee. That group will have opportunity to review the qualified applications that come in and then present from that qualified list a smaller list for you to consider for interviews. And at this point, I just want to, I will provide the names, and if you as commissioners have additional comments, be glad to take them, but probably just be appropriate for a vote of affirmation. Each of you has the opportunity to appoint an individual, but it's important for the public to know who's taking part in the process. So those members would be Matthew Hansard, who is the chair of the Audit Committee, Paula Cook, appointed by Mayor Daley, John Grayson by Mayor Pro Tem Richardson, John Clark by Commissioner Matlow, Danette McBride by Commissioner Williams-Cox, and Sharon James by Commissioner Bryant. So
Great
each
group.
of you has done your part, and we look forward to working with that group.
Wonderful group. Any public comment, Mr. Treasurer Clerk?
There is none.
All right, why don't we take a vote of affirmation? First of all, any comment, colleagues? Great, is there a motion?
So moved.
Properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Matlow. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. We are on the introduction of ordinance. Madam City Attorney.
Thank you very much. We have quite a few of these, so I ask for your patience as I read them. Item number 12.01 is introduction of ordinance number 19-0-07, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Tallahassee Land Development Code pertaining to land development approvals, expanding public notice, removing provisions superseded by state law, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The first and only public hearing is scheduled for April 24th, 2019, at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall. I'd ask that the record reflect that ordinance number 19-0-07 has been introduced.
Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any speakers on that item?
We do not.
Excellent. It does not take a vote of affirmation. Any comment from my colleagues? Wonderful. We'll move forward with 12.02. Madam City Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 12.02 is introduction of ordinance number 19-0-12, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee adopting a text amendment to the 2030 Tallahassee-Leon County Comprehensive Plan, providing for severability and conflicts and providing an effective date. The first and only public hearing is scheduled for the joint meeting of the City Commission and Leon County Board of County Commissioners on May 14, 2019, at 6 o'clock p.m. in the chambers of the Leon County Board of County Commissioners at the Leon County Courthouse. As to the record reflect that ordinance number 19-0-12 has been introduced.
Excellent. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any comment on this particular introduction of ordinance?
We do not, Mayor.
Excellent. Any comment? Does not require a vote. Let's move forward. 12.03, Madam City Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 12.03 is introduction of ordinance number 19-Z-02, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Southwood Plan Unit Development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The first and only public hearing is scheduled for April 24, 2019, at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall. I ask that the record reflect that ordinance number 19-Z-02 has been introduced.
Excellent. Any public comment?
No, sir.
Great. Any comment from my colleagues? Seeing none. Let's move forward. 12.04, Madam City Attorney.
Item number 12.04 is introduction of ordinance number 19-Z-05, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory as an in-office residential OR-2 zoning district on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflicts and severability and providing an effective date. The first and only public hearing is scheduled for April 24, 2019, at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall. I ask that the record reflect that ordinance number 19-Z-05 be shown as introduced.
Any public comment?
No, sir.
Any comment from my colleagues? Seeing none. 12.05, Madam City Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 12.05 is introduction of ordinance number 19-Z-09, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending the Southwood Plan Unit Development on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The first and only public hearing scheduled for May 15, 2019, at 6:00 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission Chambers at City Hall. As to the record reflect that ordinance number 19-Z-09 has been introduced.
Any public comment?
No, sir.
Any comment from my colleagues? We're setting land speed record here, aren't we? I mean,
It's your leadership, man.
this is good. All right, we are under, thank you very much, Madam Attorney, appreciate it. We're under 13.01, Policy Formation and Direction. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Commissioners, at your March 6th meeting, you directed staff to bring back information that could be used to evaluate whether or not to implement an e-scooter pilot program. The agenda item that you have outlines possible ways to structure a pilot program. I think you indicated the preference for just a few months so we could test it. Earlier, I think maybe at that meeting you discussed legislation, or it was brought up that the state was considering changing rules at the state level to allow e-scooters on roadways. Pending legislation is moving through the legislature, and as such, we are recommending that we wait to find out what that final legislation will be. We think that would impact the program, as e-scooters may be able to travel on roadways and bike lanes, which they currently cannot today. Therefore, we're recommending waiting to the conclusion of the legislative session to see what happens there. Sheree Bryant is here to answer any questions and walk through this if we need to.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any comments?
We do have a couple of speakers on this item, Mayor, if you want to.
Okay, since we have speakers, why don't we go ahead and have a presentation, Sheree? That'd be great.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Find my clicker. Before I begin, I do want to recognize Julie Christensen. She's our transportation planner in our office, and she has worked tirelessly on this and also keeping up her other workload to gather a lot of information from a lot of different vendors and a lot of changing information as it goes. So she is actually on a well-deserved trip out of the country, but before we started, I wanted to recognize her. And also, just I will only take just a few moments of your time. The purpose of this pilot, before we start any endeavor, always good to remind ourselves of the purpose, is to test what's going on, give us a chance to get feedback from the community, and then make those changes before we commit to anything long-term. That's particularly important because right now some of the assumptions that we would put into a pilot may still be in play. The regulatory framework, as the city manager mentioned, is potentially in flux right now. Currently, we cannot have scooters anywhere except on the sidewalks. And in order for that to happen, we would have to have an ordinance go through the city commission to even allow them on the sidewalks. What is at play is actually going through two different versions of bills right now, one in the House and one in the Senate. The big thing that both of those bills would do was to allow the scooters to operate on the bike lanes, similar to bicycles. And then that would allow the local governments to move on from there. The difference between the two is one is fairly liberal as far as what the local governments can do themselves as far as restricting the number of uses, the number of vendors, the number of scooters. And then the other one, on the other hand, would basically allow anyone who meets licensing and insurance requirements. Why that's important to the consideration of a scooter pilot is if the one moves forward that it would allow anyone to operate that meeting those minimum requirements, a pilot really becomes moot. At the time we discussed this in March, there were 7 vendors. There are currently 9 that have reached out to us expressing interest in providing the service in the city. And I've listed those there as well as in the agenda item. The considerations, also similar to what we heard in March, but we're learning more and refining those further, is defining what the coverage area are or might be. And we have 2 options in the agenda materials. How do you deal with parking? That's one big issue as far as ADA compliance, is where are they parked? Are they parked in stations on each block or within a certain area, or can people just leave them anywhere? Do people charge them themselves? Are there incentives to charge? Or do you have someone coming along every night, picking them up, charging them, moving them where they need to be? So different companies have incentives for the users to do that. Others pay someone to do it. Of course, the number of pilots, the number of companies and the number of e-scooters out in the community, speed, those are all things that go into setting up the pilot. We, of course, would want to have data sharing so that we could learn and evaluate what's happening in the community. Staff resources would also be critical. We have talked to other communities, and during a pilot program, most communities said they had at least one full-time person managing the pilot program for 3 or 4 or 5 months. So that is something to consider, because it would take staffing to do this and probably delay potentially other projects. But it certainly could be done. I want to underscore that. Concerns, safety, especially if we're limited to sidewalks. That was one of the points of discussion in March. Some of those safety concerns lessen once you are able to treat these as bicycles if the state legislation moves forward to do so. And liability, there's a fair number of lawsuits around the country. Most of them focus on personal injury and ADA violations, where you have people leaving scooters and blocking the passageway for people who depend on those sidewalks for mobility.
Cherie?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Cherie, those cases, were they, when you say liability, was the municipality being sued, or did somebody get hit and they sued?
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
I could speak to that if you'd like.
Okay.
Yes, with the ADA cases, it was the cities being sued because of the lack of access on the sidewalks, under the Rehabilitation Act as well as the ADA. With the negligence cases or the damage cases, primarily it was the companies themselves. What we can do with a pilot program, assuming that there is no legislation that simply would make it moot, would be to define who would be participating and how many of those scooters are on the road. And we would need to define things such as the speed, size. Those things are all open for local definition at this point in a pilot. Once the pilot ends, the company that are in the pilot must discontinue the program, and then at that point we'd go out for an RFP. So moving to the summary slide, as the city manager mentioned at the beginning, these are the options that were provided in the agenda item. We are recommending option 1 based on the fact that 2 bills are going through the legislature right now. And at this point, they are very different bills, so we aren't sure what to expect. It seems prudent at this point to wait until the expected May 3rd closure of the legislative cycle, and that'll give us more information to determine the best route to go forward.
Excellent. Any questions for Cherie? No. Okay. Any public comment? Mr. Cook.
Mayor, the first speaker we have is David Townsma, and then Max Hurley. As with the earlier portion of our meeting, we'll ask speakers to utilize 3 minutes for their comments and to start with their name and address.
Welcome to the City Commission chambers.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. David Towsma, 433 Bishop Street. Thank you, Mayor, Daley, Commissioners, and City leadership. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Gotcha. I do have a presentation of a few slides that I'd love to share. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Gotcha. We provide shared mobility. I spent 5 years in Tallahassee, and our founder and my business partner, Sean Flood, is a Floridian, went to FSU undergraduate, graduated from here, and actually launched our business, Gotcha, at Florida State in Tallahassee. And we continue to operate on Florida State's campus. We provide ride-share vehicles for Florida State, but we provide shared mobility. And so we're around 78, currently counting, campuses and municipalities today, providing over 10,000 mobility assets. And we've done over 8 million annual trips on either our bikes, our scooters, our trikes, or our ride sharing. So we believe in shared mobility, and I just want to share with you 4 of our items. Our e-bike, which certainly would come in handy in a town like Tallahassee with the topography and the hills, and allow you to really enjoy bike sharing going up and down the topography of Tallahassee. We also have, in the last 12 months, launched into the scooter arena. We also provide ride share, as I mentioned 10 years ago, started on Florida State's campus providing low-speed electric vehicle transportation before mobility was even a term. And then our most recent asset that we've launched is our 3-wheeled moped. It's a seated electric vehicle that can go 25 miles an hour, ride on 35-mile-an-hour streets. And so that's our latest entry into the shared mobility space. So we just really believe in shared mobility, and some of our core beliefs of the company are founded on safety and order. So everything we do exists in a shared mobility hub that's geo-fenced, whether it's a physical rack or a geo-fenced rack that we track with GPS technology. We believe rides should begin and end in a shared mobility hub to create order and support the ADA issues that we've seen out there in other communities. So, and lastly, we have been following the legislation that's in the state, and we support taking a look at that and seeing what comes forth through the state legislation. And we look forward to hopefully working with the city to create a shared mobility project that works.
Excellent. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mayor, is Max Hurley. He is the second and final speaker on item 1301.
Mr. Hurley, welcome. Your name and address for the record, please.
Max Hurley, 117 South Gadsden Street. I'm here tonight on behalf of Lime. I just really want to thank, as Cherie pointed out, Julie, Cherie, Wayne, they have all done a great job on this. I think that this model is an exceptional one. You all will be shocked to hear that I have no complaints or criticisms of it. I think they've done a great job, and they've been very receptive to not only Lime, but to other industry partners like Gotcha. So just to clarify, the staff options 2 and 3, because I do get the sense we're probably going to go ahead and wait, but just so we can begin to have these conversations, option 2 and 3 are really only different in the map. I think it's 3 is the one that is a larger area that goes north of West Tennessee and incorporates Los Robles and some of the Midtown neighborhoods. We don't necessarily have an opinion on that at this point, but that's sort of where the conversation's at as far as the maps go. As staff has spent a significant amount of time on the pilot, I just would like to keep in mind that they've been making a sidewalk-driven map and a sidewalk-driven pilot. And so regardless of what the legislature does, and at this point, as Cherie had pointed out, the House bill is this preemption bill. The Senate bill is just a definitional bill which allows scooters onto the bike lanes and roadways. Regardless of what the legislature does, whether it's absolutely nothing or what I think is the only likely thing to happen, which is the Senate bill passes, we would just suggest that the Senate language could go on top of any sidewalk-driven pilot program that city staff has worked on, and that the two are not necessarily in conflict. And with that in mind, we would just suggest that as we move forward throughout this, we hope that any delay from waiting for the legislature, that we're still able to put city staff in a posture where we can still meet the June 1st pilot program to launch.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you. Next speaker?
No other speakers on this item.
No other speaker. Let's open it up for conversation. Commissioners?
Move option 1, Mr. Mayor.
Option 1's been properly moved. Is there a second? Seconded by everybody else. Any other further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. 13.02, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, clearly we're in the throes of the legislative process. We, of course, love our legislators, and being here in Tallahassee, bringing the attention to us, and we wanted to take this opportunity, and again, at your next meeting, to make sure you're as fully up to speed as you can be in terms of what's happening at the legislature impacting us, as well as our appropriation request. Christian Doolin's our Legislative Affairs Coordinator, and he'll make the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Commissioners, and unfortunately, I don't have a tree or a 5G tower here with me, as I kind of cover some of these issues. But real quick update on the appropriations request. Right now, as of this afternoon, the city sewer resiliency project request is sponsored by Representative Osley. It is in the House budget, not yet in the Senate, and we're optimistic as the project moves forward that it will be included in the General Appropriations Act. And then the second one, our tempo request, still funded in both chambers, and again, could change once differences are reconciled in both chambers, but again, optimistic that as it moves to the governor's desk, really excited for that request. In addition to the appropriation requests, there's several points of different bills that we wanted to raise for you tonight, and we've been covering those in our updates, but a couple quick ones. So legislation on inclusionary housing, it's in its final committee stop in the Senate. It now includes language that would allow local governments to require housing developments to have a percentage of units dedicated to affordable housing. The more constrictive House version does not allow local governments to impose or enforce inclusionary housing ordinances. So we're going to have a keen eye on that as those move forward. The second one to bring forward to your attention.
Mr. Doolin, just,
yes, sir.
Just a very quick question before you leave off of that. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
only for single-family residences, or does it include multifamily?
We can follow up for sure. My understanding is this is more broad.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
We'll follow up and make sure that's in the next update.
all right.
Thank you. Legislation limiting local tree ordinances is also moving through both chambers. The Senate version allows citizens to remove trees with a certification from an arborist, and within the scope of local restoration efforts, there is a kind of an extinction list of trees you could not touch, but that lowers the threshold for residential clearing on your own lots, and it would be in a defined time period, March to June, leading up to hurricane season, billed as kind of a emergency prep resiliency effort. The House version doesn't have any of those requirements and preempts local regulations altogether. Lastly, one last one on 5G, hot topic, and the ability of telecom companies to build 5G infrastructure without needing permits from local governments or being limited by local moratoriums for installation. We're tracking those actively, as well as you see it in our weekly updates. Happy to answer any other questions, but just wanted to use this opportunity, like the city manager said, to elevate a couple things beyond our weekly status updates.
Excellent. Before we go into questions, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Excellent. Commissioners? Great. Do I have a motion to accept the report as presented?
So moved.
Properly moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously. 13.03. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item involves quite a bit of work that's happened over the last year and a half. In 2017, the City Commission, in the aftermath of Hurricane Hermine, directed staff to look strategically with a broad scope of threats and vulnerabilities facing our community, not limited to storms. We think often of those threats being related to hurricanes or hurricane-like events, but more broadly, and we initiated that effort. It's been led by Abena Ojatayo and a team approach with our department directors, and we've got a very thorough agenda item we've shared with you. I know you've been briefed on it. I would like Abena to take a few minutes and just give you a high-level presentation as we ask for your support to finalize the plan this fall.
Benna, it's great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to share with you. I would also like to acknowledge some of our friends from Kimley Horn, that's part of the consultant team that's been helping this effort so far. We have spent about a year and a half on this, almost a year and a half on this, and so I know you've had the chance to dive deep into a lot of the information that's presented for you in your agenda packet. So I'll make it very brief today and invite you to ask any questions that I'll be happy to answer. As you know, this has taken quite some conversation and time to get us to this place, and as the city manager has mentioned, we've been taking a very broad look when we say resilience, and in the context of cities, we're thinking and looking for anything that we can do now ahead of any crisis hitting our community. We're looking at ways that our people and our infrastructure and our environment can thrive, even as we experience so many changes. And you will remember just the last 12 months, I think our community has experienced quite a lot more than we might have bargained for, and we've had some more practice with hurricanes, but we've also had official snow days, we've had active shooters, we've had cyber terrorism, all of that. And so what we have been doing is taking a very proactive look, and I think you should be very proud of your staff and the community of partners that have gathered around this conversation. Building community resilience touches on every aspect of your priorities. And so what you'll see in the agenda materials and what I'll share briefly is the opportunity to touch every aspect of our civic life, to discuss sound public policy and good governance. And coincidentally, it's also been a top of mind conversation item for most of our community. So I've had the honor of shepherding that important conversation. So far, we've heard from over 2,000 of our neighbors, our frontline workers, our community partners. I'm pleased to share just a brief highlight, because what has happened is an extensive amount of data analysis and conversation with so many people that play a role in the life of our citizens. We took a very intentional approach of looking at data, assessing it, and moving it and shaping it around as many different ways as we can layer it on to make a nuanced decision. But we've also talked with people about their lived experiences, and we've learned a lot about our community values, the expectations that we have, not just for city services and assets, but we also have talked a lot about how we must work together, neighbor to neighbor, business to business, and even how we partner across our region. And we identified some of the threats and risks. Some of them are very obvious, but others were not so obvious. And we try to bridge the data and the science of resilience with the art of community empowerment. So you'll see a lot of that in your agenda packet, a lot of the maps that are attached, a lot of the feedback that we've heard from folks. So far, we have been most encouraged by the recognition that our community wants to be proactive in a changing climate, and we want to help all of our neighbors to be self-sufficient. As the plan is refined and implemented, there are several strategic opportunities that have sort of risen to the top. I'll share that briefly with you. First is that our community wants to take a proactive action on hazard mitigation and climate adaptation. We want to reduce and eliminate long-term risks to our people, our assets, and environment through innovative investments. We also, of course, cannot forget the conversation around public safety concerns all of us, so we want to create a culture of preparedness, and that is, how do we ensure that all citizens are empowered, individuals and families feel secure when they experience a shock, because we know it's inevitable. We also heard a lot about equity and social cohesion. Our community wants to feel connected with each other. We want to create equal access and opportunities for all and foster an environment where people can support each other. And lastly, we want to integrate all of these resilience data and analysis and recommendations into our strategic plan documents. We want to be forward-looking, but we don't want to just do initiatives haphazardly. And so how does all of this tie together in our comprehensive plan, our comprehensive emergency management plans, but also our everyday operations in the city? Within each of these areas, in the next coming steps, we'll be refining and developing very specific targeted actions that will come before you again for final adoption. And of course, the stakeholder engagement continues. We continue to speak with all of our department leads, our first responders. We're talking with neighborhood leaders, nonprofit organizations, and so forth, and that will continue. We'll finalize this plan and hopefully bring it back to you by September, and we hope to implement the recommendations, which will require not just city services, but really partnering across multiple agencies across our community. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present this update. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any speakers on this item.
Benny, you've done a wonderful job. I appreciate the briefing both prior to this meeting, and I appreciate the presentation. Excellent. We'll open it up. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mentioned to Ms. Ajatayo during the briefing the other day that, well, I asked her if we were on the cutting edge here, and we are, in fact, on the cutting edge, and I think we ought to make a big deal of that. So when we roll this out to the public, and we talked about some possible ways that we can roll it out to the general public so that they understand we're on the cutting edge, and maybe Greenville might want to come to Tallahassee and see what we're doing in that regard. But wonderful job. In the 40 years that I've lived here, I know this is the first time we've had something like this for our community. And just thank you and your consultants for the work that you've done, and especially the community involvement. That is what was such an important part of it, the input that we were able to get from the community on what they wanted to see happen going forward. So thank you so much for that.
Commissioner Bryant. Oh, okay, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I need to turn around and look and see if you can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Abena, you and your group have done an outstanding job. I appreciate the packet that you've given us, but Mr. City Manager, I think that she's done a yeoman's job of doing this in a concise amount of time. But when you unpack this thing, it is, in my opinion, it is a workshop issue, and I think that the community should be invited into the workshop before the final presentation, because I know we've gotten input from the community, but I don't know if they've seen it since then. But I think that it would do us well, since we are on the cutting edge. There's a danger of being on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge. And being on the cutting edge, we want to make sure we remain sharp. And I think we need to do a workshop on our resiliency plan, because as we are watching the news about hurricane season approaching, it is more than just hurricanes. It is data compromising. It is anything that can happen that could cause us to shake in our boots. So I think we should look at doing a workshop on our resiliency plan prior to the final production.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to follow up on that, because we had that discussion yesterday as well, that we need to take this throughout the community and let them see what it is we've come up with. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Commissioner Williams-Cox, that the community needs to hear about this. If we're on the cutting edge, certainly we need to do a dog and pony show around the community and roll it out.
Not to get
That's a hear.
not to get technical. Let me see the will of the body. Commissioner, lead the way here. No, I'm looking at Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Okay.
Do you want to have a workshop where traditionally we're still in policy formation and shaping it, or is it the will to accept the plan as presented tonight and then do town hall meetings to present and educate? I'm open.
Yes, we absolutely accept what has been presented tonight, but I know that what she is giving us verbally is a thumbnail sketch of what's in our packet. And I think the community deserves to get the full picture of what has been done over this year and a half. So I think I'm asking for the latter. Mm-hmm. We'll just sing while he gets consultation. Da 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 da. Baby shark, shark, shark.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Any further comment?
Yeah, I would add.
Mr. Matlow.
So I was a commissioner for about a week, and then I got an invitation to the Resiliency Summit. I didn't really know what to expect, and I showed up, and there was a lot of community participation, and there was a lot of data, and those are the two things I love, data and community participation. So well done. I do agree. It's good work. People need to know what's in it, so we can discuss about how we move forward collectively as a community to address what's been identified. So.
Motion on the table is to accept the plan as presented and host a community workshop on the plan as well. Commissioner Bryant, any final comments?
Commendations.
Wonderful.
Awesome
All those
job.
Properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by Commissioner Matlow and the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Bryant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Item number
1304.
1304.
Thank you, sir. This item involves our 5-year capital plan. So each year when you prepare the budget, we discuss a lot the operating budget, but what a company needs that is a 5-year capital plan, and that's an important instrument, a budgeting instrument that you have. And so we wanted to take the opportunity tonight to give you just a little bit of overview of how that's put together. Clearly, we're made up of what you'll hear a lot of our general fund that supports our general government activities, but we have a number of enterprise funds, a number of utilities in those enterprise funds, and so we wanted to give you an overview tonight, share with you some assumptions, get your affirmation of those assumptions or redirection. In addition, we're seeking the opportunity to do a mid-year appropriation to the operating budget for the Big Bend Crime Stoppers. It's a request for $25,000 that will synchronize us with a $50,000 annual appropriation. That's also part of tonight's request. Robert Wiggin is our Director of Resource Management, and he's here to walk us through a brief presentation.
Thank you, City Manager.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. The fiscal year 2020 budget is in full swing as we've done updates on the quarterly budget. We took this opportunity to add an agenda item to talk just about the capital budget. The capital budget supports community priorities that you're very familiar with: our roads, our sidewalks, our facilities, new parks, our utility infrastructure. Our first review with the departments of what the capital budget for the 5 years estimates $867 million over that 5-year period, with $213.8 million in fiscal year 20. Why that's critical is as we go through our May, June, July, and 2 September meetings, we'll be talking about a formal appropriation and adoption of that fiscal year 20 budget and an understanding of then what planning is required for the next 5 years. This capital improvement plan requires short-term planning, day-to-day operations, and long-term planning and short-term planning, adjustments on a day-to-day basis to see what the progress of projects are, long-term planning to make sure that our master plans are in place, that we're meeting those goals and objectives. And then it's also very important to include community involvement, community input, and to obtain your City Commission direction on where the capital budget is going. That may have been the wrong button. There we go. Our capital project status is we have a diverse amount of capital projects. They're concentrated on new construction, new equipment, maintenance. As you all know, we do road resurfacing on a regular basis, and some of those streets, most recently Easterwood Drive in Tom Brown Park, Gamble Street, and some adjacent roads in the Bond community are a few examples. We maintain 500 miles of sidewalks that we've talked frequently about. Always surprised as I run through the community how many new sidewalks have been replaced in the time since I was last there a few weeks ago, and all the markings that are there in preparation for the next phase of improvements of bringing those into compliance. No better testament for our water, sewer, and stormwater facilities than the no loss of service during storms. They maintain those well, keep those modern, and the same can be said with 3 days of restoration for our electric utility after Hurricane Michael. Great testament to the infrastructure that we have in place. We've talked about our parks and the wide variety of parks and accommodations that we have, great facilities and new parks that are coming on board this year with the Southeast Park. And then, of course, as mentioned in the earlier recognition, the all-electric university bus fleet that we'll be bringing on board. The capital budget is a balance of our needs and our resources. It's funded either by bonds when we're looking at long-term investment and expected future returns, and then there's directed investment that's expected by our utilities and by our bond rating agencies. On the left, on the pie chart, we're showing a breakdown of what our enterprise utility fiscal year 20 estimate is for the current capital improvement plan, and what our general government amounts are for TPD, for Parks and Recreation, for public infrastructure, those roads, sidewalks, facilities that they operate. The middle graphic shows you the enterprise funding. All of these capital programs are built into rate studies that we brought forth and have on schedule for the Commission. Probably the most important item in that graphic is the general government funding, where we spend the most time balancing the budget. We make decisions about issuing bonds. We have current bonds where we have FAMU Way phases 2 and 3 progressing, Weems Road extension progressing, and then any future bonds that we would want to use for other long-term construction decisions. Our cash basis for funding is renewal, replacement, and improvement is the other term that we use. It's where we invest back into maintenance, to upkeep, to make sure facilities are modern and up to date. And those come from transfers from the general fund and/or transfers from each of the utilities. Our federal and state sources are our partners, CDBG, FDOT, our gas tax, sales tax are also included in that general government planning process. You know, we talk a lot of numbers in budget, but a capital budget is really almost greater than those numbers because it's really public involvement. It's meeting community standards, safety, reliability, resiliency that we're talking about. And there's aesthetic responsibilities that we have. And then overall, is there a fairness and equity in what we build and where we build? In order to direct those day-to-day activities, where we see the sidewalk maintenance progressing or where we leave a long-term legacy like FAMU Way, we've got some prioritization, direction from prioritization. And some of the assumptions that we'll make as we develop this capital budget, we're looking for your feedback. From a roadway perspective, we use a pavement management master plan for regular maintenance. There's strategic range of pavement preservation and reconstruction methods. That's our recent 3-year investment in building up what we do to repave on a regular basis. We built that up from a time when we went through the recession to now we're up to $6.5 million where we're doing regular repavement based on that pavement master plan. New construction, we've got a road and utility master planning so that we're coordinating the timing, the impact, and we're not going back after we lay down a new road and replacing the utilities, but we're doing the utilities at the same time and being as efficient as possible. From our sidewalks, our capital project prioritization considers an inventory we took of all the sidewalks when we rededicated $1 million to maintaining those sidewalks on an annual basis. We identified 33,000 hazards, addressed 22,000 of those hazards, and are maintaining an additional 1,000 hazards a month. So that's ongoing maintenance for our sidewalk program. When we talk about new construction, we've got standards that include safety, new access on arterials and collectors, latent demand, connectivity. It's essentially addressing those areas where we have no sidewalks, or we have a community where there's a sidewalk only on one side of the street, and we want to provide the connectivity to make sure that there's safety and people can move around. We've heard the conversations that you've had, the direction you've given us, and in the capital budget, we've added an assumption to that capital budget that will program 10 new sidewalks a year in each year of the 5-year CIP to move through the list of projects that we have. And we feel like that meets the commitment that you've directed us to accomplish. It's going to take effort. It's going to take good planning, but I'm confident that we can accomplish that. Next steps. We're here to answer your questions, receive your direction. We've got additional meetings in May, June, July, and September where we'll bring back those recommendations. As the city manager mentioned, we're also taking this opportunity because it's timely to provide funding for the balance of the year, the next 6 months, for Big Bend Crime Stoppers. So we'll ask you to affirm the capital budget assumptions, provide feedback, any questions that you have about the capital budget, and approve that $25,000 in funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Mayor, we do not have any speakers on this item.
Excellent. Commissioners?
Move approval, Mr.
It's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been properly seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously, 5-0, 13.05. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. This item you discussed at your last commission meeting. It involves the RFP process for the PeopleSoft Managed Services contract. You asked for additional information, so we provided some additional information. Mr. Bishop spoke earlier about it. We also provided some public records information about the procurement process, how it works, those kind of things. And so we wanted to bring this back to you. We do recommend that you approve the highest ranked proposer and authorize negotiation of a contract with that entity. Jonathan Kilpatrick is our Chief Technology Officer, and I'd like him to just give us a brief overview for your consideration.
Thank you, City Manager. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, at the previous commission meeting, you did ask for additional information, and we want to bring that back, highlighting the fact that this continues along with our cloud strategy of using cloud where appropriate, hosted services to take advantage of efficiencies, cost savings, scalability of our infrastructure. Through that, we did go through the RFP process. That has two components, both technical competencies as well as price. Both of those are taken into account in the final score. And as the city manager mentioned, the top proposer, it was price and technical ability and technical competency. It's imperative that we have a vendor that we have confidence in for system performance, for system security, for the ability to do the things that we need to do as a city. The two options, again, are the top proposer, which I recommend. Second option is bring the application managed in-house. The top proposer does have the experience and the capabilities to do what we need done with this system. It takes advantage, again, of those system performance, scalability, and of the cloud environment that would push us forward and continue to allow us to provide the service that we need to, both to our employees as well as our vendors through our HR system, HCM, Human Capital Management, and our FMS, the Financial Management System. Happy to answer any questions regarding the process or the systems themselves.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do have several speakers on this item, Mayor.
Let's move forward.
All right, the first speaker is Ernie Payne. And then I believe Mr. Bishop said you had comments specifically on the item, and then he'll be next.
Mr. Payne, thank you for joining us. Name and address for the record, please.
Ernie Payne, 2006 East Indian Head Drive in Tallahassee. At your last meeting at Gilchrist Elementary, a concern was expressed regarding the RFP process that we're discussing. Those concerns, of course, were raised by Mr. Bishop, and his earlier comments hopefully will indicate there's going to be some redundancy in what we say here, but I'll go ahead and give what I prepared. He had two primary concerns, which were certainly legitimate given the $2 million difference between a couple of the vendors. He said that the scoring process seemed fishy, in his words, because the scores by each of the 5 members of the selection committee were identical. And secondly, because the request for public records to obtain the scoring sheets was responded to not by handwritten score sheets as he expected, but by a typed summary. These concerns made me sit up and take notice, not only as a member of the Independent Ethics Board, but also as a former IT professional in the public sector who's very familiar with procurement in the sunshine. I've sat as a member of selection committees for a number of similar contracts. I'm also a former custodian of electronic records who has responded to countless subpoenas and requests for public records and have testified both in open court and by deposition as to the methods by which they were produced. I know the difference between providing requested records and providing summaries and the importance of that difference. I expressed my concerns that night to the Tallahassee Ethics Officer, Julie Meadows-Keefe, who immediately passed them along to the Treasurer Clerk, Mr. Jim Cook. Ms. Meadows-Keefe also coordinated a meeting next week between the two of us and Mr. Cook, who was very helpful. Thanks. Mr. Cook provided the score sheets that had been provided previously as per the request. And he also explained that the RFP evaluation system, BidSync, does not use handwritten score sheets, so none could be produced. I saw from those score sheets immediately that the individual scores from the 5 committee members were not identical. There were considerable individual differences, although 4 of the 5 did rank High Street Solutions the highest, as reflected in the summary. I should note also that this issue has not come before the Ethics Board, so I'm speaking for myself only, not for the board as a whole. It's also true that according to the city charter as it exists at this time, the board has no jurisdiction over the procurement office.
You've got about 15 seconds.
I'm also not advocating for or against any of the vendors. I'm only commenting on the process, and that process was apparently conducted properly. I have copies of the score sheets with me tonight if you're interested.
Thank you. Let me re-emphasize from this position as well that you are correct. It was done appropriately. It was done by the book. Our process is electronic. That's why there are no handwritten sheets, and that I compliment our staff for doing a fantastic job during this RFP process. Thank you. But thank you for coming to testify.
Next speaker is Barney Bishop, and then Joey Norman.
Good afternoon. My name's Barney Bishop, 2215 Thomasville Road. So you heard my comments previously, so I don't need to repeat them. The process is fine, have no problem with it. So we're down to one issue, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the cost. Now, interestingly, in meeting with Mr. LeBroth in procurement, 20% of the score is the cost. In fact, of all of the different categories that the valuation team looked at, they ranked cost as the most important issue. They gave it more points than any other single category. Your winner came in at $2.74 million. The second place person, who's the current vendor, came in at $750,000. Mr. Kilpatrick indicated last time, and so let me just review some comments that he made. One, that it was poor performance. That was the problem. But actually, if you look at the audit that was provided back in 2017, on the audit, it says that an audit was conducted by the city auditor and released in April 2, 2017, outlining the issues and the challenges, performance issues, project delays, and differences in interpretations of contractual terms and conditions. That was the primary issue. In fact, it took 2 months to get it done. If you look at the audit report, it says what we found. Efforts to subsequently upgrade the 2 city systems to current versions, and let me quote, were suspended due to challenges resulting from a lack of clarity and specificity in certain contractual terms and conditions regarding roles and responsibilities of the city and the contractor staff. On another page, it said project status. The city directed Cyber on January 10th, 2017 to suspend further project activities in regard to the upgrade. In that correspondence, the city informed Cyber the upgrade services were being suspended to allow the city to develop and execute amendments to the contract that will clarify the roles and responsibilities of each party. Commissioners, you can have staff come up here and throw all the mud on the wall that you want and say that these people did a bad job. They had a 3-year contract. They gave them a year in addition. When it comes down to it, it's going to come down to the issue of, he also indicated that it was going to be, that it was lowballed. Well, actually, that's the amount of money that they got paid. And you're going to save a lot of money by keeping the current vendor because you're not going to have any transition. You're not going to have any mess ups because the people that have already been there for 4 years. He also indicated that the company was bankrupt. I indicated last time that's a disparaging remark. It's moot because the truth of the matter is it was bought by a new company. So bankruptcy's out the window. It doesn't count. And then he mentioned the job fair, and that actually was your internet service provider, not your software developer. Despite the differences, it's only 0.02 of a point. But commissioners, you're talking about $1.95 million. That's not an inconsequential amount of money. Citizens work very hard, and your job is to think what the citizens would expect you to do, and that is pick somebody good, just like NASA does, but they go with the low bidder on everything that they do. And I would suggest that you could save people a lot of money by picking the current vendor without any transition issues.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Next speaker is Joey Norman, and this is the final speaker I have on the item.
Norman, thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Joey Norman, Atlanta, Georgia, HTC Global. Had the pleasure of watching the council meeting last month, and several comments were made, and I felt the need to come down and address a few of those in person today. So thank you for having me. I think the last comment was about us going bankrupt and the financial viability of the company. We're actually a 12,000 member strong organization and over $300 million in revenues. So we're quite financially healthy, much more so than we were pre-acquisition by HTC Global. Now, there was several comments that were made before about the pricing, and I think staff had made the comments as I watched online as being an outlier, or that we had submitted a price that was lowballed and that we were coming in just trying to win the business. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go back with you, if I could. If you could just indulge me for a moment. We've been doing business with the city for over 4 years. First with the PeopleSoft implementation, which is the HCM, the financials, doing that upgrade process, and then doing the management services of that. But in March of 2015, we entered into a managed services contract, which is what we're discussing today. The price that we submitted at that time for a 36-month engagement was $773,000, which is roughly $21,480 per month. We had the opportunity after our acquisition by HTC Global to resubmit and do an extension for another 12 months. And that price came in, we're at $257,400, which is roughly $21,450 per month. The proposal that we submitted a pricing on that was considered prescribed as a lowball price came in at $20,833 a month, consistently with all the prices that we have presented previously. We've been doing business with the city for over 4 years. I think we're best qualified to understand the level of support and the pricing that's required to maintain that level of support, which feel that we've done a great job over the last 4 years. So if you look at that price and you look at the recommended vendor High Street, which came in at a price of 2.7, roughly $2 million higher than our price. And if you look at best value, their score, aggregate score, which you have that in front of you, was 70.37. Our score came in at 70.15. When you kind of step back and take a look at this from a business perspective, for 0.22 difference in evaluation scores, you're paying an additional $2 million. So in my mind, I did go to business school. It's kind of puzzling in my mind that you would make such a decision or a recommendation to go forward. I do recall last month's session, you were debating $100,000 for a study.
You're at 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm at 3 minutes already?
Wow. You are.
Well, let me comment on just a few more things.
I need you to wrap up your comments.
Okay. Staff had made a comment that we were not providing adequate services and that we failed to provide services during the job fair, which was in March of last month.
And I need you to wrap up your comments.
Okay. That was a CenturyLink discussion or problem, and that issue was not with the hosting provider, was not with cyber, so we just wanted to make that perfectly clear that we were not responsible for that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to come up and address those points.
Yes, sir.
We have no other speakers on this item.
No other speakers. We'll open up to commissioner comments. Commissioner Matlow.
Well, first off, thank you for the additional information and the follow-up when these bids are so close. The more information we could have, the better to make sure we're making an informed decision. I'm not a technical expert at all. I see the difference in the technical scorings, and I trust that the process was followed properly, and it was a good process. So I know there's a much heavier weight for the price, and that was considered, and the high bidder still won. However, when we received the alternative item for option 2 to bring the service in-house, it intrigued me because, a big part of what I believe is we need to keep local money in local hands. And it seemed like we had the ability to create 8 high-paying jobs, all over $80,000 a year. And, that money would stay locally, stay in Tallahassee. Those people would shop in our stores and buy houses in our community. So I'm interested to see what our colleagues think, but that was something I would be supportive of doing.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. I like my friend, my neighbor Ernie, I do have an IT background. I've sat in on numerous opportunities to solicit IT contracts. I've been an IT contractor. And I will say this, that what you don't want is you don't want friction in going back and forth with one another about who's doing what when you have this kind of money and risk in hand. What you want to do is make sure that you either transfer that risk to someone who can handle it, or you need to be able to mitigate that risk in such a way that there's an agreement. Just think about it. We have our retirees, we have our current employees, we have contractors, we have all of this that we've got to entrust somebody with to do what needs to be done. And I just know that I have had experience with contractors who come in low and then are not able to do the job, and then we have to do it again to get them in. So my question is, how much is it worth to us to go with someone who we believe can get the job done? And if they can't get the job done, we have remedy to fix that. But I think that sometimes when we are with someone so long, that we sometimes get to a point where you just accept what you're given. But at the opportunity to look at it contractually again, your time to make that change is at that end of that contract period. So I think that it sounds to me that this marriage may not be able to save this marriage. And this divorce, while it may cost some more, I think the insurance in the long run that we're buying will secure what we're trying to do. And if it doesn't, there are always remedies in the contract to make sure that we get back whatever we put in.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Williams-Cox, you took the words right out of my mouth. This week, I don't know that we could have a forced marriage, and this would be a forced marriage. Forced marriages do not work. And I agree with you. We have to determine, is it worth it to us to get the quality of work? We're not talking about a simplistic system here. We're talking about a system that we rely on for a number of different functions. And I'm willing to make the decision to invest in that system, and the firm that's been recommended by staff. And I have a great deal of confidence in them and the recommendations that they have brought forward, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, and I would move that we accept the recommendation to negotiate with, I'm looking for
High Street IT Solutions.
High Street IT.
Motion's been properly made for option number 1, excuse me, by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second to the motion on the table? Seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment?
I'll make this comment to address what Commissioner Matlow suggested, and I did see those numbers. I don't think at this point we're in a place to bring this in-house and not have a lapse in service, because it would take time to ramp those employees up. Perhaps we can look at that at near the end of the contract to look at possibly bringing those in-house. This is highly technical stuff. PeopleSoft is not anything to shake a stick at. You can't just go find a PeopleSoft person out there hanging out, because they're all employed. And so you'd have to lure them with even more than what's been estimated to get them here. My sister is one over at Florida A&M. So, perhaps in the future we could do that. But I think we're at a point right now where we're on an extension, I think, with this company already. Yeah. So we've got to get something in place quickly.
Commissioner Bryant.
She took the words out of my mouth. I just really wanted to address bringing on people now. I think that we need to go ahead and honor this process, and I'm ready to vote.
Motion's on the table made by the Mayor Pro Tem for option number 1, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. That is the end of policy formation and direction. We are now on unagendaed business speakers. Mr. Treasurer Clerk.
Yes, Mayor, we have, I think, 3 or 4 speakers. The first is Joseph Batavia. Joseph Batavia, and then Barbara Westcott.
Great. Joseph, thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, and let's try to keep our comments to 3 minutes like everyone.
I just have 6 things to address.
Speak into the mic, Joseph.
Microphone right there, Joseph, and your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joseph Batavia. I have 6 things addressed by issues with federal, business, and local government and nationwide epidemic. Hopefully I'm saying the right vocabulary word. 1, this is Baby. She's a blue-nosed terrier, double XL pit bull.
She's a big dog.
Yes, she's still a puppy.
Whoa.
People don't realize what service hounds do.
Can you?
Yeah, you got to speak in.
Microphone so we can all hear.
Okay.
But people don't understand what service hounds do. We have discrimination going on. We have other things breaking. When we have public service, and you're supposed to be a public servant, they think they're above the law. I'm the son of the father that wrote the American Disability Organization, a lawyer that helped write and regulate the American Disability Organization of 1990, General Thurman National Bush Sr. I'm not going the right way I want to. I'm just going with my flow, and I apologize. I speak for all the citizens in the United States of America. I don't know if you guys have people, friends or members or whatever that are disabled, that go through illnesses, but we need to address this much more. We have other things getting addressed, but we're like 2% of the population. But our population is dying, but they don't care about us. But when we address it to the local agencies, they still don't listen. We didn't ask to be bullied. We didn't ask to get picked. We didn't ask to get sick. We're born sick, or we're born with illnesses as time goes by. I was in a very bad auto accident where my head cracked wide open. I have illnesses, physical and mental. And this is all I want to say. And Mr. Mayor, the book I sent you is my uncle wrote that my father was supposed to finish. And hopefully you like it, because I've been doing this since Broward County. I come to your city because I need to speak to the governor, maybe the Senate, or bring me to the right people so we could address this, because it's been going on in our government system down south in Broward County. I had local employees touch the service hound without permission, and they don't get addressed properly. But they make us look like the bad person. And I'm asking you guys, somehow, please help us, because we're just different, just like you guys. We're not normal, but we're trying to be fit in. Thank you very much, and you guys have a wonderful day, and God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Joseph, I appreciate a copy of your uncle's book. We're going to keep it in the city manager's office so everyone has access to it.
That's fine. It's a signed copy to me, but I want you to keep it so you guys can understand. It's not about how we look. Don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe sometimes you spend 5-10 minutes with a person could change a life. But thank you very much. And there's an article I wrote in Deerfield Beach with the oratorial to show what I've been going through before I came here. So I didn't ask for this, and we shouldn't go through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Next speaker is Barbara Westcott, and she'll be followed by Darwin Gamble.
Barbara, it's great to see you.
Hello.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Barbara Westcott. I'm from
Excuse me 1 second. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm going to pass a piece of paper down that was handed to me, I believe, goes
That'd
with
be
her
great,
remarks.
thank you.
Oh, great.
So 520 Middlebrook Circle. My name is Barbara Westcott. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Swellcoin, built right here in Tallahassee at our community incubator, Domi Station. It's a veteran, women-owned company, and I'd also like to just welcome 2 of my teammates here with me. So this afternoon, what I hope to talk to you about, some of you have known me for a while. I've been working on advocacy for an initiative called Shop Tally. that I've been proposing for our community, and I'm here today to ask you for your help in that regard. As you all know, communities are losing spending to online remote purchasing. The days are gone when we can assume people will shop where they live. Compounding this is that Tallahassee lags all other Florida cities in taxable spending. We're at the bottom of the statewide retail index. But I do believe that there are things that between OEV, the city and the county, and all of us citizens that we can do to change this. A shop tally program to increase taxable sales in Tallahassee and Leon County by 5% could add another $5 million in added tax sales revenues each year or even larger. To quote the OEV strategic plans, it's within their mandate to implement a comprehensive business retention and expansion outreach program and mobilize resources for an improved business climate. A shop tally initiative, it just makes sense and it makes monetary sense. And this is where SwellCoin can help. SwellCoin can amplify the impact of a shop tally initiative by connecting it to the mobile phones and cards that everybody has in their hands, to businesses, to the citizenry, to even the public sector, where optional business cashback incentives and rewards can further drive engagement and spending here in our community and across all market sectors. We truly can increase community spending here. And there's some supportive data for this. Shop Your Community or Shop Your City initiatives can raise community spending by 4 to 10%. And business cashback programs can increase spending by over 17%. So what we've done with this innovation that we created right here in Tallahassee is to just put those two things together, a Shop Your Community initiative and business cashback. And then our goal here is to give cities a powerful tool to use to grow community spending and just make it pay to shop here in Tallahassee. And we'd like to propose a 1-2 punch to tackle this serious problem for our community. Number one is we want your help, whether through OEV, the city, or the county, to adopt and launch a shop tally initiative similar to efforts we have with Visit Tallahassee, that they can market to the community, community-wide, to galvanize our Tallahassee proud spirit, to increase community spending and jobs. Number two, we hope that you will utilize SwellCoin, again, a technology built right here at our community incubator to power this initiative with its bank-secure technology, to connect that initiative, again, to residents and visitors through their mobile phones, their cards, along with optional business cashback incentives from business in the community to further drive engagement through all market sectors. So I've talked with a lot of different city leaders over time, and as I've talked to them, most people say, look, this is just a no-brainer for our community. Of course, why wouldn't we want to do this? But I'm here today to ask for your help to not have it go beyond a discussion and go be something that we really are doing here in our community for the betterment of everybody. So I hope I can count on you to join us to try to help make Shop Tally, make it pay to shop here, and make this initiative get started here in the community.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could speak to this, I am a believer. I am on board. I've already hooked into this network. This is a woman-owned business. We need more of those. And I'm hoping that we will agree that OEV should be working with this, with Barbara to help make this thing do what it needs to do to promote shopping in our town. We don't need another store closing. We don't need any more empty space in the mall and whatever other places because we're shopping online. I fully support moving forward with this and asking, I don't know if there's someone here from the OEV office, to work with her to see what we can do to get on board to get people to shop locally. Is there anyone here from OEV?
Commissioner Ben Pingree was here earlier.
Okay.
I will make sure that he's aware of this. Barbara, have you talked to Ben Pingree or Christina Paredes?
Yeah, I think it would be good to circle back again.
Okay, great.
And I'm hoping that it's just something that everybody would, take time to think about and learn about to see this really could be something that's really good for our community.
Homegrown.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. See you at the next
Women's Wednesday.
Our next speaker is Darwin Gamble.
Darwin, good to see you again. Name and address for the record, please.
Good to be back. Darwin Gamble, 1248 Halifax Court. And I think this commission has done some really good things. And one of the good things that you did was allow public participation on agenda items when those items are taken up. That's a really good policy. And we saw some examples of that today. And typically, when you do that, you take public comment before you vote on anything. As a matter of fact, your policy actually says, in all cases, official action shall not occur until after an opportunity to be heard has been provided. So that's the way it's supposed to go. But that's not the way it went on March 27th. On one particular agenda item, 11.02, that was that pesky motion to reconsider a vote from a previous workshop. If you go back and look at the videotape of that meeting, I think you will find that you took up the item, then voted on it, and then took public comment afterwards. And all I'm asking is, respectfully, that it's a great policy, but please make sure that it's implemented fairly and consistently. But anyway, that episode also prompted me to find out what kind of rules of procedure you use during your meetings. And I did a public records request, and they said, well, the commission uses Robert's Rules of Order. Well, you don't have to use Robert's Rules of Order. You can adopt different rules, or you can make it up as you go along. It's your prerogative. But if you decide to use Robert's rules, read what old Robert says about a motion to reconsider and a motion to rescind, because I think on March 27th you got the two confused. You meant to use a motion to rescind. A motion to reconsider using Robert's rules would not have been available on March 27th. My point here is this. For your own protection, it might be a good idea to adopt some written rules, learn what they are, and stick to them. Thank you.
Darwin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Wow.
Our next speaker is?
Next speaker, and the last one I have for the evening, is Raphael, I believe it's Harriman.
Raphael, good to see you.
I may have gotten the last name wrong, but I'm pretty sure I got the first
That's
name right.
Your name and address for the record, please.
That's Rafael Marimon, and that address is 859 East Call Street in Tallahassee, Florida. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our lovely city leadership is so glad to see you all today. I just wanted to say a brief comment regarding an agenda item that unfortunately I missed earlier this afternoon, and that was 1301, which is for the scooter pilot program. As many of you know, I'm part of an initiative of a bunch of young entrepreneurs and young executives that are really trying to make root here in Tallahassee, really try to get our lives started, whether it be with our careers, with our families, with our continued education. And we're really excited when certain items such as this come, on the city floor. And I just wanted to voice my opinion on behalf of them that we totally support this pilot program, that you are all waiting for the legislation to get back at. I believe that coming in the summertime is really important. It's a great time, less congestion, less issues to potentially worry about. And just wanted to make a quick comment that one of our colleagues mentioned, and she stated that, the city of Tallahassee, we've been doing a lot to make the roads less congested and make it a more walkable city. So we believe that scooters will help contribute to that, and will help further that agenda. Additionally, we believe that an automobile-dependent city makes it less attractive to those that are potentially thinking about staying in Tallahassee or moving to Atlanta or Miami, Fort Lauderdale, etc. So just keep in mind, right now, there's a walkability metric that happens when it comes to purchasing a home, and that right there should say something about what the housing market is looking for when it comes to where they want to live. That's all my comments for today. Thank you very much for your time.
Raphael, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Do we have any other unagenda item speakers?
I have no other speakers at this time.
Commissioners, we're at the end of the meeting. It is time for the sharing of ideas. We'll start with Commissioner Bryant on the very end and work our way all the way down. Commissioner Bryant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've had a very productive meeting, and we've made some very informed decisions. So I have no other comments.
Excellent. Commissioner Williams-Cox, you're going to make your plane tonight.
I'm going to make it. Thank you.
You're going to make your plane tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
What time is your flight?
7:27.
Okay, yeah.
My flight from here to the airport, though, starts at 6.
There you go.
Two things of upcoming events in our community that I wanted to share. Earth Day, which we've spoken about earlier, is April 22nd. The 411 Teen Incorporated, which is hosted by Dr. Liz Hollifield, not to be confused with her husband, Dr. Ed Hollifield.
You apologize.
They will be having a program at Temple Israel Synagogue on April 22nd at 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And they're bringing in a keynote lecture and panel discussion with attorney, author, and veteran environmentalist activist Maya Von Razum, Esquire. So we're all invited to attend. They're also on a campaign to replace plastic straws with paper straws at Sale High School. Also, I wanted to, I promised I would mention the National Minority Health Month, which is the month of April, Working Together for Health. Every Thursday at noon, there will be a lunch and learn series at the Bond Community Health Center on the second floor. Floor. All right. Pass out. April 11th on Tobacco Road will be the discussion. And April 18th will be Senior Day, Matters of the Heart. And April 25th, Adherence. It will also be the subject. And this is on every Thursday at 12 noon. Lunch and learn. I believe lunch is free. And it's at the Bond Community Health Center on the second floor. And this was sent by Ms. Sylvia Hubbard, who is a community AIDS, HIV/AIDS provider, health assistant.
Wonderful. Thank you. Commissioner Matlow.
Yeah, just quickly, tomorrow from 8:30 to 1:30, kicking off from New Mount Zion AME Church. There's a Prosperity for All kickoff summit to address poverty in Leon County. I think it'll be a good discussion about how we can all work together to address the issue.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Just
Mayor
a couple
Pro Tem.
things. I want to again congratulate our colleague, Commissioner Williams-Cox, for her recognition as one of the 25 women you need to know in the city of Tallahassee.
And thanks to the mayor for nominating me.
Yeah. And then I'm going to encourage each of you to go out and buy this month's edition of Tallahassee Woman magazine. There's a beautiful woman on the front cover that just happens to be my wife. And I'm so proud of her and her story, really. But so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You were welcome.
You're in there too.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
You're in there.
Okay, I have to go see it when I get a copy.
There you go. Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem?
That was it.
I got two things. One is something I do need your attention that I want to bring up and get your opinion on. So we're having this conversation about a potential law enforcement headquarters, police headquarters, and one of the piece of properties that has been submitted is the Northwood, well, what is it called, Northwood Center now? I call it Northwood Mall.
I think we know about it as the Northwood Mall, yes, sir.
Northwood Mall. It is in receivership. It is going to auction. It is going to auction before we have a next meeting. And so my question to you is this something, and I'm curious to hear your opinions, is this something that the city of Tallahassee should consider participating in auction? This is a very big issue, make no bones about it. This is very unorthodox bringing this up right now. But the problem is that there's no other available time or meeting to talk about it if we are interested in participating in this. Now, even if the headquarters is not at this location, one of the things that I took away from the Greenville trip was municipally owned land and being able to control the destiny, whether it's through affordable housing, workforce housing, mixed-use development. That is one of the last large tracts of land inside the city limits that is zoned for the highest density and intensity purposes. I just simply do not want this opportunity to pass us and come back and go, man, we should have considered doing so. Now, if we decide not to participate, we decide not to participate. However, this is the only discussion we'll be able to have in the sunshine before it goes to auction April 15th and 17th. That's why I bring it up. Mr. City Manager, is there anything that I am missing or any other comment, or Madam City Attorney comment as well?
Let me add, Mr. Mayor, I would welcome the opportunity to participate for the reasons you outlined. I think that gives us a great deal of flexibility. And I think the city attorney probably would like to shed some light on, just to make sure we do the process right, if you so chose to discuss it and take action on it
Right
tonight.
now, it's just a conversation.
Right, and I would only recommend that you take public comment on the question if you are actually going to take a vote on the matter tonight.
Okay, all right. Can we just have an informal conversation in the sunshine just to get the temperature?
Certainly.
All right, what are y'all's thoughts? Do y'all want to pass over, or you want to move forward and actually put it in a posture to talk about? I'm asking y'all. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I think that this is a great opportunity to participate in this process, because even if, like you said, if we don't use it for the public safety campus, it could be used, have other use, possibly affordable housing or workforce housing or training or a number of things that we're needing here in our community. And the fact that it's centrally located is a very good thing for all parts of Tallahassee. So I think we should play.
Well, any other comments? Dr. Bryant, Commissioner Matlow.
I think we should play. I don't want to prolong that for some of the same reasons, but if we're not.
Okay, all right. I'll tell you what then. I'm getting at least a majority that would like to have a more formal conversation tonight.
Yes, sir.
Let's follow the city attorney's recommendation. Walk me through the proper role to get it to a position to formally talk. Then we will open up for public comment.
Well, you've already introduced the matter, so I think, we've set the stage for it. We simply need to take public comment.
Do we need to have a motion to formally put it on as a modification at the end of the agenda, or are we good?
No, you can move to modify the agenda at this point.
Is that the will of the body?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so it's been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox. It's been seconded by
Commissioner Bryant.
Commissioner Bryant. Okay. Any further comment on this item, which would place it on the agenda before we open it up for public comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. It is now placed on the agenda. So, is everyone clear on what is going on? It has been announced that this piece of property is going into receivership, or is in receivership and going to auction. This is the only public meeting that we can have in the sunshine. If the city wants to participate, direction needs to be given by the city commission to the city manager. And we are at a point to where we would love to hear from anybody in the public that would like to speak. And the other question I have, Madam Attorney, is is there another step that needs to take place between now and when it's proposed to go to auction? Is there another meeting that needs to take place, or does this fulfill the requirement?
It fulfills the requirement. You may want to give some direction in your motion to the city manager.
Okay. Is there anybody here from the public that wants to weigh in? Sure. And Steve, you'll just fill out a card after the fact. That'd be great.
I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but rushed decisions scare me.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to authorize the city manager to participate, I would suggest you put some conditions on it, things that he needs to find out before making a bid or whatever you do, such as, is there anything toxic there that the city is going to be taking responsibility for fixing if you buy the property? I don't know what other possible liabilities are, but probably the city manager and his staff would probably tell you better the risks that you may be taking on, that you ought to find a way to direct him so that you can not do it if it means taking on big risks.
Unacceptable risks.
So
Yeah.
those are my thoughts.
That is a very good point. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Danielle Irwin, 3185 Ferns Glen Drive. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I think this really is a wonderful opportunity. I do have a few concerns and also a request for a little bit more information if it's available. Do we understand what the appraisal value is of this, or is there some cost limit or cap that the commission might be interested in putting? I don't want, if this property is under high demand, for the cost to keep escalating to the point that we might decide it's cost prohibitive. Is there an available phase one on the property to understand whether or not we're going to be acquiring a brownfield, similar to the previous speaker? And then the third concern that I have is whether or not the acquisition of this, if we are the winner of the auction, is that going to pressure the decision for the safety campus to be here, because now we have acquired the parcel? So that's just one more concern that I'd share. Thank you.
Good point. Mr. Manager, what information do we have on this piece of property in the auction process?
So the auction process begins April 15th. It'll be open for 3 days. You have to be registered. The starting bid, it's about 30 acres of property, as we know, in the center of our town, about 500,000 square feet of space. That clearly is beyond its useful life. Maybe it has some short-term life, but would need to be either heavily invested in or raised to make the property useful. The level of contamination or not is not known. We would do our due diligence the best we could before we participate in the process. We know that the property is impervious largely, so stormwater issues are not a concern, which normally are in a development like this. The starting bid for this property is, I believe, $2 million. So this property will sell below market value, and we believe that. We would not bid market value on this property. That's pretty much what I can tell you now. Now, we would ramp up quickly. Again, the process begins on Monday, and it lasts for 3 days.
When did they announce the auction?
We were notified last week of this auction time. So the bank is moving quickly to dispose of it, and you have to be a registered bidder. I think this will be a limited number of participants, from what I can tell.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Her last question was concerning whether or not this signals to the community that this will be the location for the law enforcement campus, and I want us to be clear that this does not signal that.
No.
That we will still look at other properties if we are the successful bidder. We may or may not determine to put it there, but this does not signal that that location has been chosen as the site for the law enforcement campus. Am I correct on that, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
I think we have to say that and underscore that.
Okay.
Is there anyone else from the public? Darwin, you want to come speak? I see you getting up.
Why not?
Again, Darwin Gamble, 1248 Halifax Court. If I were sitting up there instead of out here, I would be just as intrigued by this as you are. So I can't, I'm like Steve Bean, I can't say whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. I just think you should gather as much information as you possibly can. And you should establish a cap. I mean, there's a level you should not go above when it comes to purchasing this property. And you probably already have a cap in mind, I don't know, and maybe can't say. But
we'd rather not say.
Yeah.
I would say.
Don't want to tip your hand this early, Darwin.
I would say proceed, but proceed with caution.
Right.
That's all I can say.
And Darwin, I know you can appreciate it. Look, the five of us have the same information that you have right now.
Kathy, it's coming.
Oh, yeah, just a second. But Darwin, the thing is that under Florida Sunshine, we can't talk. This is the only opportunity that we have a chance to talk about this. And that's why I asked the city attorney to walk us through to make sure that we're in the proper position, because we can't have any other discussions. And this is the only meeting between now and when the auction. So if the city was to participate, this is the only time to have the conversation. Yeah. Kathy?
Kathy McGuire, 1101 Pine Street.
So you mentioned that it's the highest commercial zoning right now?
I believe that malls are the highest density and intensity. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Tedder.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know. I think that's a good assumption, but I'd like to get some comment. Wayne Tedder is looking it up. He can address it.
So, but your thought, just as you contemplate this, it sounds like you're thinking, well, it could be rezoned. What we're looking at is this big landmass, not necessarily that we want this big commercial property. Or is the point to buy commercial property?
I can make an argument that as one of the last pieces of property in Tallahassee, to be able to purchase that property, right now it's 100% impervious, that if, depending on what the decision is that it could be a redeveloped workforce housing neighborhood that complements an elementary school, a middle school, and Levy Park right in the heart of Tallahassee, that we are desperately in need of affordable housing and workforce housing. And by the fact that the city owns the dirt, it gives us the opportunity to control the destiny of the property and specifically what is developed there. That's why, especially if we can get it under market value at an auction because it's in receivership, I wanted to have this conversation with my colleagues so we're not possibly passing up an incredible opportunity if we wanted to move forward. Please, this is unusual.
Yes,
jump back up.
Yes, sir, I understand. I just thought that it would be helpful to people who will be looking at this conversation tomorrow, that you could say, yes, for the reasons that you're speaking of, and it's not necessarily that we want business property. We want this property for the reasons you said, and we'd look at what the best use of it would be. That's what I think I hear you contemplating.
Correct.
And I also was looking at the calendar just because people will have questions tonight and tomorrow.
Sure.
And it looks like if you were, that the time is precluding you from providing public notice and having a meeting on this topic. That's kind of why it's now or never. Is that the case? I mean,
Baby shark. Thank you for the time. It's a little after 6.
Yeah, so Kathy, this is the weirdest of all predicaments because number one, what the city manager was telling me is that the city, if we were going to move forward to participate, number one, you have to register as a fiscal agent, okay, which means that a fiscal decision has to be made tonight to, I guess, pay a fee to participate. But even under sunshine laws and public meeting notice laws, we don't even have legally enough time to reschedule another special meeting to this is it. Right. No, you're absolutely right. This is one of those weird, crazy, we're under the 8 ball with rules and regulations moving forward. Madam Attorney.
Right, and the law only requires reasonable notice. In this situation, we have a situation where we're trying to give the most notice possible based on the circumstances that we find ourselves. So it's reasonable notice under the circumstances.
Sure. So anyway, anybody else? Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Hi, thanks. Ramona Abernathy Payne, 2006, East Indian Head Drive. This is so exciting. And yes, it's scary. It's scary to come up so fast, but I've had the thought for several years that housing might be a good option there. Right. And in the process of housing, you could tear up some of the asphalt and mitigate some of the flooding problems that are there. Yes. I do have a concern. Another piece to add into the looking into it for the bid process would be what happens with tax roll issues. What impact would that have on the tax rolls? Yeah. Thank you.
Great point.
Legitimate point.
Anybody else want to comment on this item? Anyone else want to comment from the item? Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would move, Mr. Mayor, that we give the city manager direction to participate in the auction for the purchase of the Northwood Mall property.
Okay, it's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been, I will say it's a unanimous second to participate. All right, let's have a discussion about this motion moving forward. Comments? Anything else? Commissioner Matlow.
Just wanted to address the 3 points because I share similar concerns about brownfields and toxicity and that sort of thing. So I would say between now and the auction date, do as much due diligence as we can and consult with risk management to see if there's any red flags of why we should not buy it. I trust your judgment, Mr. City Manager, in determining if those exist. On the police safety campus, that was the first thing that came to my mind. We don't want to rig this open process that we've started.
Not at all.
So I want to make sure that if we do win the auction and this is considered public property, it doesn't get extra points that we're not buying it. The price we paid will go into the consideration of the cost compared to other public properties. And then if it does not become a site selected by the community for a safety campus, we make sure we have a community-involved conversation about what the new purpose should be.
All right, in an abundance of caution, I'm calling for public comment one last time. Is there anybody that wants to weigh in? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously, 5-0. Okay, I have one lighthearted thing. Okay, so on April 17th, right in front of City Hall, we are throwing a community-wide free party celebrating Tallahassee and to introduce formally in 2019 the Florida legislature to our wonderful community. It's called A Taste of Tallahassee. It is completely free. It is open to the entire public. Tallahassee Nights Live is performing from 4:30 to 7 o'clock. We're going to have local flavors. We're going to have some local drinks. It's going to be great. Tell everyone, again, it is free and open to everyone. Open to the public. I have nothing else. Seen nothing else. We are adjourned.